characteristics of Mendelian segregation and polygenic inheritance. Typical monohybrid cross of Mendel involving a monogenic trait shows the following. Number 1, the parents belong to two distinct phenotypic classes known as homozygous dominant and homozygous recessive. Number 2, all filial 1 offspring resemble one of the parents because one gene is dominant over the other. Number 3, filial 2 offspring show segregation into dominant and recessive phenotypes in the ratio of 3:1. Monohybrid cross involving a polygenic trait shows the following characteristics. Number 1, the parents belong to two distinct phenotypic classes, known as homozygous dominant and homozygous recessive. Number 2, all filial 1 offspring show a trait intermediate between parents because the dominant genes failed to fully suppress their recessive alleles. Number 3, filial 2 offspring show a wide range of intermediate condition and a very limited parental traits. Now let's proceed to the distribution of phenotypes in the filial 2 of polygenic cross estimation of gene number. In the cases of polygenic inheritance, the extreme of parental phenotypes are few and the intermediate phenotypes are more frequent. As the number of segregating alleles increases, the frequency of parental phenotypes in the filial 2 generation decreases, and that of the intermediate phenotypes increases. Thus, the number of genes involved in the polygenic inheritance can be judged from the frequency of phenotype distribution. In difference between qualitative and quantitative genetics, qualitative genetics, it deals with the inheritance of trait of a kind, form, structure, and color. At discrete phenotypic classes occur which display discontinuous variations. Each qualitative trait is governed by two or many alleles of a single gene. The phenotypic expression of a gene is not influenced by environment. It concerns with the individual of meeting and their progeny, and its analysis is made by counts and ratios. On the other hand, quantitative genetics, it deals with the inheritance of trait of a degree, height of length, weight, and number. A spectrum of phenotypic classes occur which contain continuous variations. Each qualitative trait is governed by many non-allelic genes of polygenes. Environmental conditions affect the phenotypic expression of polygene variously. It concerns with the population of organisms consisting of all possible kinds of meeting, and its analysis is made by statistical method. Allow me to discuss to you the two types of inheritance, the qualitative inheritance and the quantitative inheritance. Qualitative inheritance, its characters are classical Mendelian traits which have two contrasting expressions and are controlled by a single pair of genes. It can be expressed by a single pair of genes. Hence, the results are called monogenic traits. The quantitative inheritance. A quantitative inheritance or a polygenic inheritance deals with the inheritances of a quantitative characters like height, weight, skin color, and intelligence in the human population and exhibit continuous variation. Few characters in plants like height, the size, shape, number of seeds, and fruits also exhibit quantitative inheritance. In this inheritance, each gene has a certain amount of effect, and the more number of dominant genes, the more is the degree of expression of a character. The gradation in the expression of the characters is determined by the number of chain pairs, and all the chain pairs have additive or cumulative. Proceed to the characteristics of qualitative inheritance. A qualitative inheritance or monogenic inheritance deals with the inheritances of qualitative characters which have two contrasting expressions. Each character is controlled by a single pair of contrasting alleles. There is no intermediate type. Each character has two distinct contrasting expressions, like for instance, they exhibit two distinct phenotypes. The degree of expression remains the same whether the character is controlled by one or both the dominant genes. Single effect genes are seen. It is not influenced by environmental factors, and it shows a discontinuous pattern of inheritance. Characteristics of quantitative inheritance. A quantitative inheritance or polygenic inheritance deals with the inheritances of quantitative characters. Each character is controlled by more than one pair of non-allelic genes. Each character has an interbreeding range of phenotypes. The degree of expression depends on the number of dominant genes. Single effect gene cannot be seen, and it is influenced by environmental factors. It shows a continuous pattern of inheritance. And lastly, it concerns with a population of organisms consisting of all possible kinds of mating.